The late Betty White is being remembered for all of her accomplishments in entertainment, but also for being a well-known animal lover and advocate. The Golden Girls supported nonprofits and causes for animals for decades. And in honor of what would have been her 100th birthday this month, animal shelters across the country are calling for people to make donations to adopt or foster the pets in her honor. These are some of the animals up for adoption. Look at these cuties at the Florence Area Humane Society, who have been staying in the facility now for months. The president of the shelter says White's legacy will never be forgotten.
I think she truly showed us what compassion means. I mean, she was an advocate for not just dogs and cats, but wildlife, preserving, conserving. She wanted to make sure that animals existed way past her lifetime.
The Florence shelter is in desperate need of money right now. They say they need food, towels, laundry detergent, and volunteers to spend time with their pets and to get them out of those kennels. White would have been 100 years old on Monday, January 17th.
Jennifer, Scotland County Chief Deputy Travis Harper says the officer mishandled the 14-year-old student on a school bus in November. He says that officer has been suspended, demoted, and disciplined. Officials say a situation between a deputy and a 14-year-old girl in November on a school bus in Scotland County got way out of hand. Scotland County Chief Deputy Travis Harper says Deputy Sharonica Smith responded to a situation on the bus with two siblings who didn't want to sit in their assigned seats. He says Deputy Smith was there to make sure the students got off the bus at their house as the driver requested. The teen's mother, Latoya Monley, says she was outside of the bus waiting to get her kids when she heard her 14-year-old daughter's voice.
By the time I got here and I was getting out of my car, all I could hear was my daughter screaming.
At some point, Harper says the deputy and the 14-year-old girl started punching each other. Harper says Deputy Smith did not use excessive force against the teen, but could have handled the situation in a better way. He says an internal investigation led to Smith being removed from her position as a school resource officer, demoted from a sergeant to a road deputy, suspended without pay for 7 days, and she has to go through mandatory de-escalation training. Latoya Monley says she's glad Smith has been disciplined for her actions, but feels like more could have been done.
I'm somewhat happy about, what went on with her, but I just feel like it's not enough because the more I think about it, if this was anybody else, they would be behind bars. But I guess the difference is she's wearing a badge.
The teen's mother says she initially apologized to the deputy because at the time she had no clue what happened.
Well, Jen, there was one ordinance in particular that stuck out among public comment. It was a rezoning ordinance recommended for approval by the Planning Commission, but council thought otherwise.
This one's over, unless something comes down the road and they request a different rezoning or new designation, they could certainly bring it back. But for now, it's over.
Unanimously voting against it, Horry County Council agreed they would not be moving forward with the development along West Beargrass Road off Highway 905. Developer Thomas and Hutton proposed 362 single-family homes to be built on 300 acres.
Density-wise, it wasn't a tremendous amount of density, but there's just been a lot of issues with the drainage in Cowpen Bay. But the biggest thing to do is Polo Farms, which has flooded several times. They had a lot of concerns from the downstream.
Residents voiced their concerns over flooding and building on wetlands to the council.
My concern is that you do not have adequate placement for this water.
We all know what happened along 905 when Waccamaw Simpson Creek flooded. We all know what happened to a couple of the neighborhoods there. It was a disaster.
We have at least 50 lots that are platted within the wetlands with 110 acres of wetlands on this parcel without really a substantial wetland buffer.
While Councilman Causey says Thomas and Hutton have been working hard on details of this development, council just isn't ready to approve it until these concerns are addressed.
We've got some studies hopefully coming up on Simpson Creek that's going to be done to see how it can be modified to maybe hold a little bit more, as well as Buck Creek, which is on the other side of 9.
Councilman Causey and other council members tonight discussed the topic of wetland buffers, mainly focusing on how they should be built, what size they need to be, and their distance from the wetland itself. Councilman Causey says the council plans on going into further detail about buffers in 2022 so they can address this concern with future rezoning requests.
Those are farm-to-market roads. They can't handle this kind of traffic.
It's unsafe, and that's where we as community leaders have to do the right thing for the people.
In November of 2020 and again in August of 2021, Horry County Council approves what they thought was the right thing to help deal with growth, a resolution opposing rezonings on highways 90 and 57.
What we did was said, okay, you're not going to take your rights away, but we're not going to let you increase it.
This after a petition and countless public outcry in favor of a building moratorium. That's a pause enforced by local law with the promise to take action to ensure the growth is sustainable.
There is a path forward with a moratorium. Right now we need to have all options on the table.
Chris Stevens joined that fight for a moratorium over the past year, even writing a draft law for the county to look at.
And do you trust that these resolutions are going to be enough?
I don't think the resolutions will be enough. I think we've got to take it a step further.
Both council members Danny Hardy and Harold Worley flirted with a moratorium at first. So what changed?
In speaking with the legal department, county legal department, how's the best way to handle this? They said, well, we don't want to do a moratorium. That was more of a county, had the connotations of a county-wide ordinance. And so said, why don't we just do a resolution, which is basically just saying that's the intent of council.
But the SC Association of Counties shows it is a tool available to counties.
It's legal now. It's generally, you can't just say no more development ever and we're not going to do anything to try to catch up the infrastructure.
Josh Rhodes is the Deputy Executive Director with the SC Association of Counties.
It's all fact specific. It depends on how it's done.
He says the power of a moratorium is not clear cut and local governments have to tread lightly.
What a court, I think, would look at is time and area.
Councilman Worley says they were concerned a moratorium would have to be county-wide, but SCAC says in some cases it can be site-specific as long as a goal is laid out by council, including when it would end. Those facts have neighbors like Stevens questioning the will of council.
The legality or the moratorium opening the county up for lawsuits, was brought into question. I don't think our county's done its homework.
I questioned Councilman Hardy about the legal concerns.
You guys got a lot of criticism by not going all the way in for a moratorium, and I think you mentioned the legality of it was what stopped you. Well, elaborate that for me.
Well, you can't take a man's right away. If a man owns the land and he wants to develop it or he wants to build on it, that's his right.
But state law is firm. Landowners can't change zoning on their own.
You don't have any right to use the property if it's zoned for another use. You don't have a right for it to be rezoned.
With case law and state law backing a moratorium, council still held off. Councilman Worley admitting the uncertainties were too great.
If council had somehow moved forward and done an amendment to an ordinance with that moratorium, the roof really would have caved in on you guys from the development and housing lobby here in the county. Is that pretty much the case you guys were told?
I think yes. In speaking with the legal department, yes, that was the reason we just dropped back and did a resolution.
That legal advice still won't keep the county out of court. Council now faces a lawsuit for the rezoning resolution for land along Highway 57. Worley says they don't know when either highway will be improved, so they can't set a moratorium there. They don't have an end time in sight. But he thinks the tide is changing on county council.
We can literally, next council meeting, go get on the dais and pass it. But it's not our intent right now to do that. We could change our mind.
Stevens still thinks the council needs to keep in mind what residents asked for in the very beginning.
We need to look back at our past mistakes, like Carolina Forest, like Highway 90, to make sure that we don't have the same thing happening in the Longs community, along 905, 9. Yeah, we need to make sure we're not going to see the same things in Loris and Conway and Ainer.
I looked back at every county council agenda since that Highway 90 rezoning resolution was passed. Since then, there have been no rezonings sent to council and approved by council involving that portion of Highway 90 involved in the resolution. Now, there have been several that have gone and passed involving Highway 90 past Highway 22. There has been talks about having a similar rezoning resolution for that portion of the highway, but no formal vote has been taken yet on council.